Hello, friends. Hello, hello. Today is December 28th. The time is 2:07 p.m. on East Coast. You are listening to Maker Park Radio. My name is Ed Ka, and we are broadcasting live from Staten Island. This is Electrosteam Radio Show. First of all, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everybody. I hope you are having great time and all of you guys having good time. It's only a few days till the end of 2018 left, and I'm very happy that I am able to do one last show for this season and for this year, in fact, episode number 26. This year turned out to be very eventful for this show in particular. We had many good guests and interesting DJs, music producers, and as well as instrument makers, musical instrument makers, visited the show during this year, as well as a few very legendary musicians who participated and have been interviewed through the year. Also, I am so proud and I'm excited to continue on the same path next year as well in the 2019. But for this show, I invited a very talented and unordinary artist and electronic music producer. His stage name is known as Batiskaf. He lives in the state of Massachusetts in the city of Boston. Batiskaf's music often reminds you of sound production usually associated with popular artists such as Aphex Twin, Artikri, and Music. Please welcome Stas Tarashansky.
Hello.
He's sitting in the studio with me on my left. If you're watching us on live stream, you should see his face with the headphones, his smiling face, right? And the opening track that we played to this show is called Victorina. It's a Russian. It's a Russian name for this. And if we will translate it into English, it means the lottery. And it's from your project, and it's from the project That Shot, which we will speak of later in the show. So let's move on and let's play the second track from your collection. And the second track will be Barceltronica.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. awesome track. And you were listening to the track called, it was titled Barceltronica. And I have to mention something. The title of this track seems to be a combination of two words. The word Barcelona, which is the capital of Spain, and the word electronica. We all know that Barcelona is a well-known place for its electronic scene. It's very well known, as well as for many annual music festivals that take place in there. One of them, the most prominent, would be called Sonar. And Stas, can you give us some insights? Why did you choose this name?
We actually been to a couple of sonars a long time ago.
Really?
We've been to Barcelona many times.
Yeah.
Over 10 times with my family and with my friends. And sonars was pretty awesome. The fact that they have these huge venues throughout the Barcelona. We love the place. We recently lived there for 3 months. We sold our house in 2016 and started traveling the world. One of the places where we wanted to stay was Spain. So we stayed in Barcelona for 3 months just to get a better feel of the place, and it is amazing. It's really amazing. Wow. In terms of track, it's a combination of Barcelona electronica. I like electronic music, and I make one, and I like Barcelona. And at that time, it was a period when I was studying flamenco guitar. So there were a couple of tracks where I tried to combine the standard flamenco, classical flamenco guitar with some obscure IDM music. This track was partially built on the sound sample by Global Goon. He was well known a long time ago, probably when I was making music. Yeah. So there was few competitions going on. It was one of the competitions for which I created a track. It has nothing to do with the original track. I just took a sample and made something completely different out of it. So that's the story.
That's very, very cool. I didn't know that part actually. Wow. That's first of all, it's a respectful move. So you sold your house to travel. Yeah, that's.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I recommend it. I recommend it to everybody.
Yeah, right. Well, to everybody who can handle this, right? Yeah.
Who can sell their house?
Sure. Who can sell? First of all, you have to get the house. All right. Yeah. If you have the house, you can sell it. Well, at this point, you're living in Boston, right?
Yes.
And but this week you came to New York, and I know you've planned it ahead to visit New York during Christmas holidays season. So how is it? What is your experience now?
It was the best Christmas we ever spent. We've been to New York on Christmas once. It was very chaotic, and we ran around. But this time we planned it a little bit. Actually, we didn't have any plan. That's why it was very successful. We said we're going to just go with the flow, and that was the best move. We had a couple of touristy things we wanted to do. We wanted to go to a Central Park. We went from Strawberry Field to the Alice in Wonderland. We, strolled the Central Park. We strolled the streets. We went, where did we go? We went to Broadway show. We saw Illusionists, and just a regular touristy things. And we enjoyed so much. And my kids who are 5 and 10, they love it. So we really had a blast, and thankfully the weather was awesome. Right now it's raining, but we had full 3 or 4 days of excellent sunny, warm weather.
I'm glad for you. I'm glad that you're having a good time.
Yes.
And do you want to maybe give some kind of maybe you want to share some interesting place that you visited, or some show that you wish to recommend to our audience?
We went to Illusionists. We like the New York Rockets, but we went to see Illusionists because kids wanted to see some magic.
Yeah.
And we went to the tickets place on Times Square and just got the tickets right there and then. And in an hour, we were sitting right next to that tickets place. And it's a nice Broadway show. I think it goes till the end of December. So if you want to catch it, it's only a few days left. It's fun. It's fun, but if you like magic, if you don't like magic, go see something else.
I think everybody likes magic.
So go see it then.
Sounds good. So let's continue with the music. The next track I would like to play is called Fahrenheit Fair Enough. And also it's like there's some reference, Telephone Tel Aviv.
It's a remix on Telephone Tel Aviv, also for some competition that was.
Sounds good. So let's hear it. Very, very cool. I really enjoy, Stas, by the way, I really enjoy how you work with I understand you're working with the sample and somehow you're tweaking time stretching, pitch stretching. I'm not sure, but this is a very particular technique, and I haven't been able to master it yet, but it looks like you got it. To all of our listeners who just joined us, you're listening to Maker Park Radio. This is Electrosteam Radio Show. My name is Ed Kai, and I'm with my guest, Stas Tarashansky, who is whose stage name is Batiskaf. He is well known as Batiskaf, but we will talk through the show about his other participations and other stage names as well. So, and the track we just played is a remix for the track Telephone Tel Aviv, and you named the track Fahrenheit. Fair enough.
It's their name, yes.
It's their original as well name, yeah.
Correct.
So it's the artist name, Telephone Tel Aviv.
Telephone Tel Aviv is one of the electronic musicians from the past.
Very cool. Also, I would like to share with our audience just a few things about you. It's actually a whole full list of different releases and other participations you've done in different projects. You released 2 albums, an EP which came out in 1999 called Battle of Fishes, and the other full album which is titled Light Plastic Life, which was released in 2011. In 2011. Also, your music was published on multiple compilations, including the one that was produced by a famous Russian musician, Vasily Shumov, who is the leader of the legendary new wave band called The Center from Moscow. With composition, and it was a big compilation, and your composition on that, the name of the release, actually it's the compilation release name, The Content Mix, released in 2010. In addition, you've done some work with the filmmakers and composed 2 soundtracks for 2 short films. One is called Unreality, released in 2002. By the way, I watched that short film. I think the idea is awesome. Yeah, and it's based on a true story. It's about a girl who was it's a young teenage girl who was playing games, and eventually she fell in love with another gamer online, and as a result, they went on a date together, and then she disappeared, and it's based on a true story. It's a very, very sad movie. I mean, very sad story, but nevertheless, you composed the soundtrack for that movie. And the second movie that you composed the soundtrack for is called Sister's Kiss, released in 2007. And this movie also can be found on IMDb website. It's the website where we all checking out ratings for different movies, and I did find that movie. That's pretty prominent, man. That's cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think we should. I have questions in particular about your involvement with different projects, but I want to keep on going with the music until the right moment.
Excellent.
Okay, so let's hear the next track, and the next track is called OVB. Do you know? Can you tell us why you called it in such an acronym?
I have no idea.
Just
It was random. No, it's standard for something. It's surely an abbreviation for something. I don't remember what it is.
Okay. So let's hear it and come back to our discussion. You're listening to Batiskaf at Maker Park Radio. And that was Batiskaf with his track OVB. Very cool, very cool. It's almost Christmas music, actually. Almost the music for Christmas, right? Yeah. So,
Yes.
and by the way, if you're watching us online right now on live stream, you can see that we are displaying two of Batiskaf's albums that we mentioned earlier, displayed on the video right now. So let's talk a little bit about your stage name and how this came about. As a performer, you performed under 3 different titles that I found out. One of them is called Batiskaf, which is IDM music, intelligent dance music. The other one is called The Chot, but I understand it sounds like a Russian, like a it's
Respect.
yeah, it's derived from a Russian word, but you made it spelled like it's an English. It's an English word. That Chot, which is with exclamation point, right?
Yes, of course. Important.
Important, yeah. Just like another band we had here on Electrosteam called Nogu Svilo or Cramp in the Lake or Charlie Horse. An exclamation point was an important piece. So that chot it stands for it's a different, slightly different style, which is for EDM, for electronic dance music, right?
I would call it this way. I think it's a pop music. Yes.
It's electronic pop music.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
And also you performed under the as a DJ under the name FAQ, and you played electro.
Yes.
And electro is my favorite style of electronic music, actually. So tell us about the names. Let's first talk about Batiskaf project. Hold off on the second, on the second and the third title. Just to give heads up for the audience, what this Batiskaf is, what kind of name that is.
I was told the story of the name is from started in the 90s. The first time I wanted to make music was much earlier than that. But in the 90s, I went to record this Battle of Fishes album, and I needed to have a name. So Batiskaf was something that came out of my grandfather's stamp collection. I was big fan of his stamp collection, and he had a full set on those bathyspheres, those flotation devices, not flotation, those underwater devices that can go deep underwater. That's how I imagine my music, and that's how this first album of mine sounds. That Battle of Fishes sounds. Battle of Fishes album sounds exactly like an underwater music, and my idea of perfect sound design would be a combination of electronic and acoustic instruments, electroacoustic music, so to speak. And that came to me when I first listened to the Depeche Mode Songs of Faith and Devotion album. I think that's one of the best albums out there. I've listened to that album for a million times.
Definitely really good album.
After I've seen the video of Corbin on Walking in My Shoes, I grew long hair. It was very influential, basically.
Yeah.
And the combination, what Martin Gore did with combining the electro guitars and electronic instruments and samples and what's not, it just made so much impression on me. I said, this is how I'll be making music from now on. So that's what Batiskaf is. It's the complex music which rooted in pop music. I was listening to Police, Depeche Mode, you name it. And then I started listening to FX Twin right around that time. FX Twin, Auticro, all the Warp Records, Reflex. And it was a clash of those two things, the electronic and acoustic, pop and IDM, that sort of made my sound. I think that's what it is. That's what Batiskaf project is. It's absolutely nothing you can perform live, and I knew that because when I'm looking at the shows being performed by FX Twin, where he just sits with a laptop, I don't think that would be something I would be interested in. That's why it was always something I would just record. I was a recording artist. I never been a live artist. So that's how Batiskaf started.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Yeah, and the actual, just the name itself, I was looking up on Wikipedia for the names just to understand. I wanted to be clear to non-Russian speaking audience what Batiskaf means, because in English it's actually different.
Mm-hmm.
In English, Batiskaf means a bathy scaf. Batiskaf. Maybe you can give a better pronunciation.
I have no idea. It's a Batiskaf, I would say.
Yeah, scaf, Batiskaf. Basically, it's a free diving device, free diving, self-propelled, deep sea, submersible, like sort of like a submarine, but it's slightly different than submarine. Very similar, consisting of a crew cabin similar to a bathysphere, which is another device, but suspended below the difference between Batiskaf and something else, it usually usually held by a cable, but with Batiskaf, bathysphere or Batiskaf, as the name. I know it's a little difficult to pronounce, but that's the reality of it. It's more or less is a self-contained sort of like a submarine that usually it's used by scientists to research they do in ocean like study and so on, and that's what they use. That's a very special, specifically built for scientific purpose and research. And yeah, basically, I kind of thought, what a cool name. It's definitely just the name alone gives you like a whole. You can say whatever you want. Any concept will work very well with this name. I write this music because I feel that I'm a fish. I write music because I'm thirsty. I write this music because I feel that I'm in the bath under the water.
Yeah.
These are my bubbles. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very cool. So let's continue with the music, and I want to play the next track, which is called Nina. Nina, ladies and gentlemen. and that was the track called Nina by the artist Batiskaf, who is he's sitting here with me in the studio at Maker Park Radio on Staten Island. And I'd like to thank all of you guys who are sending us uplifting messages, and actually some of our users, some of our listeners just gave excellent feedback. It was just right spot on. Somebody messaged by the name Electrofan that this track sounds like it was written in JavaScript. It was just right on. We actually were talking about what Stas does otherwise besides writing music, and he's actually into the development actually.
Exactly.
So it's
Exactly
not
that.
far from truth, yeah. So can you tell me, please, Stas, can you tell me how you approach music, and can you share some of techniques that you apply while working on electronic music production? What is your personal approach?
I went through many stages. You've mentioned earlier that I'm kind of bending sound. That's how I look at it. So on one stage, I was very into bending sound, playing with the pitch correction and the pitch shifts and all that stuff. But when I started, it was pretty straightforward. I didn't concentrate much on playing with waves themselves as more the combining sounds so they produce some reasonable landscape. The way I, look at music, I listen to music, and if I see the visual, then it's a good music. If I don't see the visual, then it doesn't make any sense. So I'm trying to produce the music that creates some sort of visual, and that visual is something that I see before I start to make track. I see a picture in my head or some moving picture, and then from there comes the music. So I went through multiple stages. I went through electric guitar combined with small LS's sound box as when I started. Then I went into acoustic guitar combined with like more rougher sounds. Then I went into electro as the DJ FAQ. And that was an interesting move. I was making all this complex music, and it was not gaining any momentum. So I said, you know what? All this simple music is so popular. Let me start making something simple. So I started making music that would take me 15 minutes to produce. And from there was born the DJ FAQ. It was just like, without swearing, it was a response to a more complex music I was making. I started making something very simple, and that actually produced more response than anything I was making before that. So, so after that, I started making all this 15, tracks that would take me 15 minutes to create using the Nord modular synthesizer with a very, very unique sound. It has like knobs, so you can play with pitch and oscillators and what's not. So all the DJ FAQ was based on that. And after that, I started, playing with it, and then that shot was born as the more advanced version of DJ FAQ. Again, very simple melodies, very melodic approach with Nord modular. That's how it was. I wanted to make something dancier, poppier, just to see if that's going to kick in, but it didn't. What we just listened to, those Nina and OVB, those tracks, I just purchased the Native Instruments collections, and I was playing with their live instrument samples, and I'm fascinated by all the piano samples, all the Oriental instruments that they have. So I'm combining some rough IDM beats with something that's softer, more organic, and from there I think that's where my sound is. I think I like it.
That's interesting. And my next question is, how do you combine acoustic sounds with electronic beats in terms of do you sample using hardware samplers, or software? How do you work with this?
In the past, I was using hardware samplers. I had a Kai S5000, and it was a nightmare because in order to sample anything, it was running on floppies, and in order to sample anything, you had to record something into a computer, chop it up in recycle, and then port it all onto floppy, and then from there you need to port it onto the sampler. I later played with Ensoniq ASR10, which was very famous beast. It's a heavy keyboard sampler. Same thing, you could run SCSI drive, but mostly I was running with floppies because all the samples were short. the sound is definitely nothing can substitute that sound. All the hardware samples produce the sound that's clearly cannot be produced in the software world. But it was way too complicated. I spent more time playing with samples than producing the music. So lately, I went through multiple DAWs. I started in the 90s with a Cakewalk, then I moved to Cubase. I tried other ones. I tried Pro Tools, but nothing clicked. So I stuck with Cubase for quite some time, but it's a very linear approach. And lately I discovered the Ableton Live. That's how the Chot was born. I was actually mingling with Ableton Live, and I said, you know what? Let me just record a track. I recorded a track. I said, oh, let me just record an album. And I recorded an album out of just playing off with Ableton Live. So lately I've been playing with Ableton Live. I think it's the most versatile tool. I mean, I love it. The things it gives me is just unprecedented. I still sticking to acoustic instruments like acoustic guitar and electric guitars, which I record directly into computer. Then from there I process the samples in Ableton Live. And in terms of synthesizers, I still use my Nord Modular, which is the external synthesizer, but everything else is all sampled libraries by either Native Instruments or some I guess of offline.
That's interesting, very interesting approach. I know you mentioned before getting into the studio, you and I had a quick conversation about Ableton Live. I'll give it a shot. Yeah, I know I've heard about this. I've seen it. I played with this. My friends play with it, but I kind of stick with hardware samplers. And something else, I remember something. Actually, I constantly remember this, and I'll tell you what. At home, for my home studio, I'm using Kurzweil sampler. It's another beast from back like mid-90s, 97 or something. And I remember back in the day, you and I, we know each other for a long time too, like since, 2000s or something, yep. Right? So I remember that you told me back in the day, you used to work in Boston for the Ray Kurzweil. Is that true?
Yes, I worked with him.
It's amazing. You were working on
He was on
AI.
the second floor. I was on the first floor. Yes, I worked for a medical learning company. We actually created a virtual patient who doctors who needed to extend their CME, continuing medical education. They could just diagnose the patient. They could, tap on him and listen to his heart and everything. So it was an amazing project. Unfortunately, it didn't take off.
Wow. Back in the 90s? That's early
2000s. Yes, it was 2000s. Wow. We also created. It was a.
That's amazing. That's super interesting.
Yeah. So he's an amazing guy. I mean, Kurzweil is just a great
super
inventor.
Smart.
Great inventor.
Yeah, see, he's super smart. You're so lucky to work with person. It's like he's I don't know, like Edison of today's times, even more sophisticated because he is considered to be one of pioneers in AI research. Right? I think that's the name of his research company, Kurzweil AI.
Yes, he has a company called Kurzweil AI. Yes.
Yeah.
He works for Google now, I think. I may be mistaken.
He's consulting probably them. Yeah, yep. I'm sure. This guy won't work for anybody. It's like, how do you employ a person like this? He's got his own company.
Right.
That's just every time I use that sampler, I think of you. I don't know how to.
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but thank you.
It's a good thing. Yeah, it's a good thing. I know. I'm thinking. I know somebody who worked with somebody who made this sampler.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. That's cool. All right, let's move on. And I know you are very big on making remixes as well, right? So a lot of your tracks are remixes to something else. And you also making remixes for some authentic bands as well and projects. One of them, Auticry, right?
Yes.
Am I pronouncing it right?
I think it's Auticry.
Auticry. Okay, Auticry, yeah. Which is an English electronic music duo. Well, I should have known this because I used to listen all the time, who knows, to them. So it's an English electronic music duo consisting of Rob Brown and Sean Booth. Both of them working in Rochdale, which is part of Manchester region. And you made a remix on their track. Would you like to announce their name?
I don't remember what the name is, but
It's
yes,
Neil. And
it's Neil. Yes, okay. So there was another competition going on, and it was just that period. All these tracks, the Balshaltronica, the remix on Telephone Tel Aviv, and this Audicra, they come from the same time when I was mingling with acoustic guitar. So it's the remix on Audicra called Neil.
and I wanted to do a little experiment. We just heard your remix for Autechre, the track called Neil, and now let's listen just for comparison. I brought a vinyl of, if you guys watching us online on live stream, I brought a vinyl for Aphex Twin for his album, from his album Syro, and I'm gonna play a track from his album. Just to hear the sound quality between you and Aphex Twin. What about this comparison, right?
I like it.
Okay, so let's just let's hear it. And by the way, it's from the record company. It's from the record label that you really love, as you said. You love anything from Warp Records.
Yes.
Yeah. This album was released in 2014. Let me just put something. Yeah, and that was Affix Twin. The latest track I just played is by Affix Twin from the album Cyro, and I have to say that I can definitely make a parallel and say that to me your music sounds on the same category.
That's a great compliment. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, you could take your record and put on, and it's going to sound just as obscure. And I love obscurity. I think any deviation from what's considered to be the standard is cool, as long as it's done properly.
Yep.
And
I agree.
Very, very cool. Very cool. I'm glad to know somebody in my very close circle of friends. Yeah, that's cool. And let's talk about your work while your technique when an approach while you're doing remixes. What is first, second, and third, and so on?
First, the most obvious thing is listen to the original.
Right. Is it really necessary?
and then make it completely different. Yeah. My approach to music, I completely on board with you when in terms of obscurity. It has to be somewhat reasonable, but it has to be somewhat obscure. If it's too soft, if it's too faceless, I mean, it's boring. So every time I listen to I need to make a remix on somebody, and I did a couple in my past. I did one on Zdobsh's Dupe, I did one on other bands, and every time I'm making one, I don't want it to sound somewhat similar to what the original was, because it doesn't make any sense to make a song and make the second one which sounds exactly the same. So I either take a melody or I take a small sample of it from that song, and I make something that's completely my own, because every time, I think that comes from the past. When I listened to albums that had remixes on them, I always enjoyed more the ones that didn't sound anything like the original. It could be the melody that's there, but the sound instruments are completely different, and that's where I am. The more obscure it is, I think the better, as long as it's within the certain limits where you can actually listen to it and not sit there in the corner crying.
Okay, that's a good answer. Now let's talk about actual gear. How do you approach? Yeah, what gear do you use to do that? What you've listened to the track, you've listened it whatever in digital format on a vinyl or CD, and then
it usually depends on who asks for a remix. If it's a competition, they usually have stems, which are like WAV files from the original, separated by tracks. So you can grab, a piece of a wave that's been distributed and just work with it. Sometimes, I was making remixes without having any stems, so I would just build all the sound structure from scratch on my own. When I worked for something, I worked on remix for Zdobsh's Dupe for Eurovision contest, so they sent me the full stem with all the voice samples and instruments and everything, so I just took the voice sample and probably like one of the obscure native instruments that they played, and then use those, and everything else I wrote from scratch. I think that gives it, I want it to sound like me. I don't want it to sound like them. That's my approach to it. In terms of to answer your question, in terms of equipment, it's been changing all the time. I never had something that I would set on and stick with it other than this Nord modular synthesizer. Everything else went and comes and goes. It was PCs before. Now I'm on Macs. It was Cubase. Now I'm on Ableton. It's constantly changing. Another thing that stuck with me is the native instrument libraries and instruments. There are so many of them. You can just you can spend your whole life playing and mingling with them, and you'll never run out of them. So the Nord modular and native instrument collections are my tools to go.
Okay, I got you. So you are a software dude now.
I switched to software other than this Nord modular. That's a hardware synthesizer. When I'm recording guitars, I just record them either directly. If it's electric guitar, I record them directly into the sound card. If it's the acoustic, I use my mic, the NT1 Rode NT1.